Only, right, by merging two batches, only 8 members are joining, right? So going further, guys, those who are interested to learn the concept, right, ping me personally. I will share the Zoom credentials. I will share the documents to them. Those who are not interested, I don't care about them, right? Because I'm not going to share the, right, what I can say, documents. I'm not going to share the Zoom credential with them. Even I'm not going to share the recorded session with them. Because it's very, right, what I can say, it very bad, pathetic scenario or situations, right? So right, I'm preparing the documents, I'm preparing the example whole night, and at the end, when I, right, start the session, only 18 members are there. This is really very pathetic scenario, and I don't want to entertainment anymore. Those who have attended today's session, right, please put your email ID in the chat box. And I don't care, right? Whoever, right, whatever they are doing, I don't care. I don't mind. Those who are attending the session, they will get everything. Those who are not attending, better they leave the groups. So whatever Telegram groups we have, if someone is not interested, better they leave that group. I see one group is 250 members, another group is 125 members. And when I'm merging two batches and taking the session, only 18 members are there in the live session. This is really very pathetic scenario, right? So, guys, those who have attended, right, those who are joining, please put your email ID in the chat box. Clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today what we are going to discuss is the remaining filters, right? The result filter, exception filter. Also, I'm going to discuss what is the difference between a service type filter at right, service filter attribute and a type filter attribute. When to use one, right? What benefits we are getting with each approach. That is what we are going to discuss in today's session. So let's start with the result filter. So result filter is basically a powerful mechanism to execute logic before and after the execution of action result. So before and after execution of the action result, this result filter is going to be executed, right? So what do you mean by action result execution? So what do you mean by action result execution? See, if you look at this diagram, so we are having the action method. So if you look at this example, what we have created yesterday, so log request response demo, validate input demo, standardized response demo, execution time demo. So these are nothing but one action method. So what is the use of this action method? Now they prepare the data or result which needs to be sent to the client. For example, you want to return list of a product. You want to return a list of what I can say, employee information. You want to return one order details. So this is nothing but our data. If you take the example of a MDC application, then it is going to be a view or partial view that what we need to return. So basically, whatever the data you need to return to the client, that data is going to be prepared by the action method. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Basically, based on your type of a data what you want to return, you can have different type of action result, or you can use the action result or I action result, which is the parent class. For example, I want to return JSON data, I can use JSON result or action result or I action result. I want to use view result, I want to result return, right, object result, I want to return empty result, I want to return file result, I want to return redirect result. So basically, for different kind of data, we are having different type of a result method, or you can say result action type. And even, right, if you look at our application, we are not using all the type. We are using either I action result or action result. Why? Because these are the, right, what I can say, proper data or parent data type. For example, instead of I action result, so I can write action result, that is fine. instead of this action result, I can also write object result, that is fine. I can also write JSON result, that is also fine. So basically, see, when I'm writing JSON result, I'm getting some error. Why? Because this is not a JSON object. So here you need to pass JSON object, right? So point what you need to remember, if you are using specific type, then that type of a data you need to return. See, this OK method is not the method of a JSON result class. So here, right, what you need to do, you need to either return the data in the form of a JSON, or you can use the action result or object result or iAction result. So the point that what you need to remember, we have prepared our data, list of a product is ready. But when the client receives the data, the client is not going to receive the data in the form of a list of a product. For example, here I'm having this .NET object, which is containing the data. But this .NET object data I'm not returning to the client. The client is going to receive the data in the form of a JSON. Along with JSON or XML, right, whatever type of data you are going to return, it is also going to return, right, it is going to, right, get some HTTP headers. It is also going to return some HTTP status code. So without HTTP headers, without HTTP status code, without data, the browser or the client cannot understand this thing. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Right, sir.
Right? Right? So basically, who will take the responsibility for converting the data what is written by this action result into a format which is going to be understood by the client? So for that purpose, we are going to, right, so for internally, or you can say internally, the MVC framework is going to make use of something called action result execution. So if you look at the definition, or if you go to the implementation, you will see either action result, or execute result async. So if it is a synchronous method, this one will execute. If it is a asynchronous version, then this one will execute. So any type of data you will take. So here action result, you will see both. Now, if you are going with the I action result, definitely you will see this execute result. Similarly, if you are going with the object result, then also you will see that action execute to action execute result method. Similarly, if you are going with JSON result, then also you will see the same method. Go to the definition, see this method. So basically, once our action method execution is completed, once our action method execution is completed, before returning the response to the client, the MVC framework will invoke this result execution method. The MVC framework will invoke this method, and this method will convert the data what is written by the action method into a format which is going to be understood by the client, like converting our data to JSON, adding the required HTTP headers, right? Uh, Adding the required HTTP status codes. So all these things are going to be handled by MVC framework internally. So now if you look at this, so this action method is nothing but our action method, which is going to prepare the data result which needs to be sent to the client. But this data cannot send directly to the client. So in between, right, there is something called result execution by framework. So based on the type what you use, that execute result async or execute result method will be invoked. That method will transform this data into HTTP response. So this is nothing but your .NET object. So even though we are using this JSON result, action results, so these are nothing but your .NET type. So this .NET type result will be converted into HTTP response. Who will convert this? Framework will convert this. So once it is converted, then that response will be returned to the response stream and the client will receive that HTTP response. Clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Right now. Now, once you understand how the result execution is happening, that is how the framework will generate the HTTP response from our action result. Now we need to understand the result filter. So we understand action method is there, result execution by framework is there, then the client is going to receive the response. So this result filter what is provided by ASP.NET Core, it is going to come at the time of a response generation. So when the request is received, there is no use of a result filter. So as you have already discussed, first one is authorization filter, which is going to validate whether the request is, user is a valid user or not. Then it is the resource filter, which is going to either return the response by short circuiting or reject the request, or it can proceed to the normal flow as it is. Then the next one is the action result. Action result means before and after executing the action method, that action result will come into the action filter. That action filter will come into the picture. After action filter, your normal method execution is going to be happening. That is the controller action method execution. So once the controller action method execution is done, then only this result filter will come into the picture. So what is the use of result filter? Now the result filter is basically going to intercept or manipulate the response which is needs to be sent to the client. And the result filter will come into the picture at two different places. At what different places? One, after the action method execution, and another one after the result is processed by the framework. That means, so before this result execution and after this result execution, that result filter will come into the picture. Clear? So this is my action method. After action method execution, this pre-result filter will execute. Then the result execution, that is by the framework. Then this post-result filter will execute, and then this response will be received by the client. Mostly, we are not going to do these two things. Anyone is fine, but if you want, you can also use both. Right? And I'm also going to show you how you can make use of both of this filter. So basically, once your action method is executed, if you want to execute some logic before the result execution happen, then you can use the pre-result filter. So what type of data you want to do? If you want to modify the result, whatever the JSON data, .NET object you want to modify. You want to format the data from JSON to XML, right? You want to add some kind of a custom HTTP header. So if you are going to do all these things rightly, then you have to use this pre-result filter. So once the pre-result filter is executed, then the result execution is going to be happened by the framework, which is going to serialize the data, set the header, set the content type, set the right HTTP status code, response body, everything. So once this is done, now if you want to execute something else, right? Something else means you want to add some kind of logging for the auditing purpose, right? Output to transformations, right? So if anything you want to add, then also this option is there. That is a post result filter. And after the post result filter, this is happening on the HTTP response object. So directly that updated HTTP response will be sent to the client. So basically, this pre-result filter will execute at two different places. You can say after the action method execution, before the result execution, and so this is meaning is same. So if you say after action method, that is fine. If you say before result execution, that is also fine. And the second one is after the result execution by framework, this post result will execute. Clear?
Yes.
Yes. So this is important understanding the flow, right? So what is the real-time use cases, right? So basically, result filter are meant for giving the final touch. Result filter are basically meaning it's basically used for giving the final touch. For example, you can see your action method execution completed means your business logic is completed. So before returning that response, do you want to enhance that business logic, right? For example, whatever the result, I want to return the result in a specific format, that output to transformation. Yes, you can do this. Now, before returning the result, I want to add some kind of a custom HTTP headers. Yes, you can do this. So this is nothing but giving a final touch to your response. Similarly, if you take this example, your chief is going to prepare the what I can say food. He is the action method. Your main business logic is going to be handled by the chief. So once the chief is prepared, right, that result execution is happening. So whatever the raw right food is there, that is going to be put in the plate. That is nothing but your result execution. Then the same thing, right? Once the result execution is happening, you want to give the final touch. right? So add some dessert or something else to the food. So this is nothing but your result filter. So this result filter, it can come before the result execution. It can also come after the result execution. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? Similarly, if you give the example of packing a gift box, right? So you're suppose you want to send one gift to your friends, so you're putting that gift inside a box. So that is nothing but your main object. So this is nothing but your result execution, packing that gift with some good involved decorating, and finally result filter is adding some extra things, right, to enhance that looks and feel. So it is adding some greetings card or some greetings that is nothing but your result filter. So basically, what is the main objective of result filter? Giving the final touch. Clear?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
Right. So let us proceed and understand how to work with this result filter. So basically, you can see like other implementation, here also you have three different approaches. One, you can make use of iResult filter. There are two methods there. One is on result executing, on result executed. So on result executing means what? On result executing means pre-result filter. On result executed means it is the post-result filter. So that is what you need to remember. There are two methods. If you are using the asynchronous version, then only one method is there. This one on result execution, right? So on result executing means before the result execution. On result executed means after the result execution. Clear? And if you want,
Yes.
you can also create the attribute, filter attribute by inheriting, by implementing this, or you can say inheriting from this result filter attribute class. So these three approaches we are going to discuss practically. Clear, guys?
Yes.
So I will give
Yes,
you
sir.
multiple examples so that you will get a better clarity. So result filters demo. So what I'm going to do, okay, let me uh, close all tabs. Okay. So to this solution, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a new project. The name is going to be result filters demo. And like always, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this project as the startup project. And here I'm going to add a folder called filters where I will create all my result filter, right? So this is my project. So now global response wrapping. Wrapping means what? Data transformation. So data transformation means what? Now basically, what is my requirement? Now my requirement is to return the data in a standardized format. So I'm not going to bother the action methods. Rather than I want all the response to be returned in a specific format. So basically, if your action method returning the data in this format, I want to convert this data into this format before returning to the client. Clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. For this purpose, what I need to do, I need to create one result filter. So let me go ahead and create the filter. So API response, wrapper result filter. You can give any name, right? But whatever the name you are giving, it should be related to your project. I mean the business logic. So let me go ahead and show you this thing practically. See, so here iResult filter I am implementing, and this iResult filter means this filter having two interface methods. So even though if you use or not used, if you are implementing this interface means you have to provide a implementation for these two action methods. So result executed context, it will give access to the complete HTTP response, right? So now so this is on result executing and this is on result executed. In here you can write. So I'm not using this one. I'm using this one. So in this case, right, what we need to do, check if the result written by the action is object result. So basically, if it is a JSON result, then what we need to do, we need to return the data. So object result. Then what I'm doing here, please observe, I'm creating my JSON object, right? If the action result is object result, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap the response into a JSON object. So basically, you can see the data which is going to be returned, the data which is going to be returned by the action method is this one. So this data I want to convert into this one. So basically, so object result dot value, the object result dot value is nothing but the data which is going to be returned by the action method. So that data I want to convert into this format. So it should have a status, message, and data. And this data is going to contain the data which is returned by the action method. Status, whatever the status, if the status is null, it is going to say 200. Definitely, if you are coming to this part, 100% you have a status. So message, if the message code rate is 200, then this is success. Otherwise, it is going to be error. So this transformation, whatever we are doing, right, only right, you can see uh, only right when the data is going to be some object result, right? And here the data, whatever the data is written by the action method, that's what we are storing here. So basically, as we are storing this information inside the on result executing, so means what? Means before the result execution happening, so this transformations we are doing. And then we are setting that content result to this one. So basically context dot result means whatever the response we are going to return, that will be the response now. Whatever the status code we set, that will be the status code. So these things are going to be taken care by the result execution. He will return this response to the client with this status code. If the result is an empty result, right? For example, here it is a something there, some data is there, and here the data is not available. I mean that there is nothing to be written. So you are returning one empty result, no content. So whenever you are going to return 204 status code, that is going to be no content. No content means we need to set the status as 204, message as no content, and the data as no. Right? And finally, whatever the JSON object we created, that what we need to set in the result property. So basically, in this case, we have handled two scenarios. Any other scenario, if you want to handle, then also you can handle. So basically, when the data is there, we are returning 200. When data is not there, we are returning 204. Apart from this, if you are returning some internal server error or something else, then this is not going to handle. It is only going to handle when you have data and when you don't have data. Apart from this result type, anything else means this is not going to be handled by this what I can say, helper, result helper class. Clear? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right now. Now, before returning the response, what is my requirement? My requirement is to add some custom header. So basically, I want to add the cache control header. I want to add some API version header, right? This API version is going to tell what version of the API is being used, right? Some caching header, some any other right custom header which is required as per your requirement. If you want to add, then that what you can also do, right? If right, that what you can also do by creating a custom result header, result filter. So let me go ahead and create this one. Add custom headers result filter. So this is going to be my class name. So within this class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check and I'm going to add two custom response header. Right? So first of all, you can see on result executing. So this time you can see I'm inheriting from the result filter attribute. So this result filter attribute provide all the options. You can execute this method, you can execute this method, and you can execute this method. And more important, all are virtual method means the basic or default implementation is provided by the class. If you want, you can override this implementation. Now what I want to do is I want to override this method on result executed. So the sorry on result executing. So before the result execution, this method is going to execute. So first of all, get the response object, right? So from the context, I can get the response object. In the response object, please check whether this header is available or not. If this header is not available, then please set this header value to this one, right? For example, some of the API, if they have already set this header value to something different, then we are not going to update this thing. So we are going to only update if this header is not available in the response. Similarly, what I need to do now, if the request method is get, if the result is object result, and if the status code is 200, right? If we get request having some data with some status code 200, that means what? That means it is a get request, the request containing some data, and the status is 200. So what I can do is I can ask the client, hey client, please store this cache for some read for some time. Some time means 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever time period you can cache this result. So you can use this result again and again for the next 1 hour because this data is not going to be changed. For that purpose, I'm adding this response header. So this header means the browser will respect this header. The browser will cache the result for the time duration what we provided here. So he will not write even though right if they need this data, they will not make a call to the data right to the server for getting the data. Why? Because we are telling them to cache this data for some 1 hour. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Nice. Basically, this header, if it is not set by the action method, then this is going to be set by this filter. And if the result method is a right, if the action method is a get, and if the result type is JSON, and if the status code is 200, then it is going to set this result head. And finally, it is calling the rate base class on edge result executing method. Why? See, in this case, this result filter attribute, so it is already implementing this method with some custom logic. So this logic we need to execute, right? So how you can execute? Just by calling the base class on result executing method. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is another example where we are doing the where we are adding custom headers. So now, so customizing response content. For example, what happens now sometimes whenever we are going to deal with a large payload means what? Like you want to return some thousand records to the client. So whenever you are returning a heavy amount of data, then that will take more time when it is traveling over the internet or the network. So what is our requirement or what exactly most of the application, what they are doing? They are using something called compression. Compression means what? Now, if your original data size is something about 100 KB or 100 MB, so if you compress that data, minimum 60 to 70 percentage of the size is going to be reduced. For example, if it is 100 KB, it will reduce that to something around 20 or 25 KB. So that reduced size, right, that compressed data is going to be transferred over the network. And at the same time, right, whenever you are doing the compression, so you have to tell to the server, hey, sorry, to the response header, or you can say to the client, hey, client, I'm compressing this data using this mechanism. So when the response is received by the client will again, right, get the original data, or you can say decompress the data, and he will get the original data. So basically, from our application, we will send original data, the client will receive the original data, but over the internet, the compressed data is going to be transferred using some compression mechanism. So like GG. So let us see how we can do this. So for example, we will create one result filter. That result filter is going to check if the data size is more than 100 KB, then let me compress this data. If it is not more than 100 KB, less than 100 KB, then please transfer or send the data as expected. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So let us see how we can do this. So for this purpose, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another custom result filter class. Okay. See. So now what I'm doing here, I'm using this iasync result filter. So I'm going to show you all the options. So this time I'm using this on result execution async method, overriding this one. This is one asynchronous workshop. So this context object, what exactly it means? It means, it is going to, what I can say, store the request and response object, and this delegate is going to contain the next middleware component, right? And this one only going to be executed before the action result execution. So now please check. So whatever the response object that what I'm storing here, the original response body I'm storing here. So this is going to be my original stream. Stream means original response body, which is going to be returned to the client when the request comes. So according to the request, what is the original response stream? That what we need to return to the client. So here, what I'm doing, I'm storing that into here, and I'm creating a memory stream object. So what is this memory stream means? This is, you can consider a temporary variable. For example, if you want to swap two number, right? If you want to swap two number, then you can create a third variable which is going to store the data for some temporary purpose. The same thing is also here. So this is my original stream body, and this buffer stream what I have created, right? It is a temporary stream. So first what I'm doing here, now whatever the original stream, that what I have stored inside a variable. Then I have created a buffer stream. So you can see this is going to be a temporary stream. And this temporary stream I have stored inside the request body. So first of all, you can see this is my original. So this original I have stored here, right? So for example, if you want to understand this thing, right? So let assume response body contains some data type. Response the body. So this response body contains some value type. So in this case, what I'm doing, so I'm creating this original body response original body stream from this one. That means at this point of time, this variable is going to store 10. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So this
Yes.
is my original data, and this data I want to return to the client. Now what I want to do, I want to modify the response stream. So for that purpose, whatever I'm doing here, I'm creating a temporary variable. So now let assume this is storing 15. So this is going to be 15 buffer stream. I mean, this is my temporary variable 15. So this 15 now I'm storing in the response body, means what? The response body now going to store the temporary data or not, which is going to be 15 or not.
Yes.
Yes. Right? So basically we are created this variable and this variable to swap the original data. So this is my original data 10. That 10 I'm storing inside a temporary variable, and this variable I'm not touching here. So this is what I will return to the client. Then what I'm doing here, I'm creating a buffer stream, I mean a temporary variable to hold the stream object, and that temporary stream I'm replaced with my original stream. But that original stream I have already stored inside a different variable. So this stream, so this response body is always going to be returned to the client. But now that response body containing a temporary variable. But before it stored the temporary variable, that original response body I have already stored inside a different variable. Right? So once this is done, next what I'm doing here, please check. I'm calling the next delegate. So this will execute the next filter or action execution, whatever, right? For example, once the action method is executed, so this will execute. And this will call means that result execution is going to be happening. Once the result execution happen, right? Once the result execution happen, that means your response is ready, because that action result execution, what method is there, so he will prepare the response. Response means he will convert that HTTP JSON of right, that .NET object into JSON, setting the HTTP response, setting the right, what I can say, everything, right? Status code, header, everything is going to be set. And then what I'm going to do, so this is my buffer stream. So you can see buffer stream, right there. And that's the 0.rc origin. So what exactly it means? It means reset the buffer position to the beginning so that we can read the buffered response content. So basically, so this buffer stream means it is containing the original response body, and this original response body is set by the right, what I can say, the next middleware component, which is nothing but your result execution. So that result execution set the response. So now I want to read the response from the beginning. So why? Because if I'm not going to read the response from the beginning, then how I can decide what is the size, what is the data size, do I need to do I need to compress the size or not? So for that purpose, we need to read the data. So this is nothing but resetting the buffer position to 0 so that we can read the content from the beginning, right? Then what I'm doing here, I'm checking whether the content type is not equals to null. So definitely that the content type should not be null, and it should have application slash JSON. The content type should not be null. The content type should be application slash JSON. And this buffer string, what we have already set to 0. So to read the content from the beginning, so that buffer stream content should be greater than 100 into 1024 means 100 KB. So 1 KB equals to 124 bytes. So 100 KB means 100 into 124 bytes. So basically, if the response of what is stored in the temporary buffer area, that response content type is application slash JSON. If that response length is greater than 100 MB, then only we need to go ahead and we need to compress the data. So how? Now, first of all, we need to tell what compression mechanism we are using. So how we can do this? By setting this content encoding response header. This content encoding tell the client that this response is GGP compressed. So that what I have set here, GGP compressed. Then what I'm doing here, I'm creating a memory stream. This memory stream is going to contain what? What exactly it is going to contain? It is going to contain the compressed response. So here you can see this is my buffer stream, which is going to be replaced to the original response stream. And now again, I'm creating a memory stream. Why? And this memory stream is now going to contain the compressed data. And then what I'm doing here, so I'm using this gzip stream class. I'm passing that complex stream. And what is the fastest way to compress the data? And then true means even right, true means third argument true means leave the compression stream open after disposing, right? So once the compression right is done, please dispose that compressed stream. So that is the reason why I'm passing this true. And here, what exactly happening now here, that buffer stream, right, whatever the data is there, right, in the buffer stream, so that will be compressed into this GG. So using this gzip stream algorithm, right? I mean using this gzip algorithm, it will compress the data from the buffer stream because this buffer stream is actually contains the original data which is written by the action result execution. So here I think you guys are getting confused. So consider this is your original data stream, original stream. So this is the original stream. I created a buffer stream. This buffer stream, right, is filled by the action result execution. Why? Because that buffer stream is replaced the response body. And then when I call this method, so this buffer stream is populated. And we are reading that buffer stream from the zero, position zero. Why? Because we want to read all the content. So once you read the content, we need to check what is the response content type, whether it is application slash JSON. And then we are checking whether this buffer stream length is greater than 100 MB or not. If it is greater than 100 MB and the content type is application slash JSON, then we are setting the response header to right content encoding header to tell the client that we are doing this response right. We are compressing this response with the GZIP algorithm. Then again, I'm creating a temporary response stream. So why this temporary response stream? Because this temporary response stream is going to contain the compressed data. And for storing the right and for right compressing the data, we need to create an instance of a gzip stream object. And to this gzip stream object, I want to pass this compressed stream where this red compressed data is going to be stored. So what is the best or fastest way to compress the data? And after the compression is done, then please dispose of this compressed object, right? And then I'm calling this buffer stream which contain my actual data, and I'm passing this GCP object so that this data, whatever stored in the buffer stream, will be compressed, and after compressed, it will stored inside this compressed stream. Clear till now?
Yes.
Right. Now what we need to do? So this is my compress stream. So again, I'm resetting the position so that we can start reading from the beginning. And then you can see that response body I'm going to store with the original stream body. So currently you can see that the original body is going to be there. So this is going to be my original stream body. So because this is what we need to return to the client. So we cannot return this buffer stream. We cannot return this compressed stream. Yes, this is there. For what purpose? For creating some temporary area, but this is the original stream. What I need to return. So that original stream I'm replacing here, and then I'm setting the content length header. What is the size of the content? It is optional. If you set that is fine. And then what I'm doing here, so this compressed stream data is there. So that data I'm going to store inside my original stream. So how? Now compressed stream dot copy to async, and that what I need to pass. So now guys, remember at any given point of time, this original stream body will return any given point of time. At the end, this is what we need to return, and for that purpose what we need to do, so that replace that original response body, whatever the data is there inside this compressed stream, that what we need to store. So that is what we are doing here. And if there is no changes, right, for example, if the length is not greater than 100 MB, or the data is not in the form of application slash JSON, that means what, a compression is not required. So in that case, what we need to do, now we need to set the response dot body with the original body. So here you can see. So here we are storing the response body into this, and later we need to store this one again within the response dot body. So we need to store response dot body, and then that temporary data currently stored inside which buffer stream. So buffer stream. So whatever the data is there, please store that data or replace that response body with this buffer stream. So basically here two things you need to remember. This is my original stream. Then I'm calling this method, which is going to fill this buffer stream. We have two options. If the buffer stream length is greater than 100 MB or less than 100 MB. If it is less than 100 MB, then whatever the data we retrieve, that data we need to store inside my original response body. If not, then inside, right, if the length is greater than 100, then we need to create a compressed object, compressed stream, and that compressed stream we need to replace with this original body stream. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So if you are getting some confused, you might be getting some confused, right? That makes sense. So just that is the reason why I have provided statement by statement, right? Inline comment, so that you will right, get more clarity. Okay, so let me remove this thing. So basically, this is right, one of the approach to implement a compression in your application. And guys, remember, whenever you are going to right to work with real-time applications, and if you are sure that some of the right action method, the data is going to be a heavy one, right? For example, if you are returning some kind of file, some PDF file, some Excel file, some JSON data, which is a very huge amount of JSON data, please try to implement this compression technique to improve the performance, because the more data travel over the network is means more time, less data means less time. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Clear? Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a audit logging filter. So basically what is my requirement? Now my requirement is to right log the information, right? So whenever the result right is supposed to be written, right? Then what we need to do? We need to completely right store the response details into a logger file. So whatever the data we are going to return to the client, that complete response information we need to store, right? So for that purpose, what I can do is I can create a log. So right, so I'm giving different examples so that right you should not have any query or question. So if someone asks you this question in the right interview, you should be very ready, right? What is the real-time use cases? So that is the reason why for each action filter, I'm giving multiple real-time example so that you will get clarity. Along with also, I'm giving the layman point of view, right? So that you can compare, right? And you can easily recognize. So in this case, you can see I'm taking my logger instance and injecting that through constructor. So this on result executed. Now you just tell me once everything is done before returning the response to the client, I want to store the login. I want to store the response detail. Then in that case, which method I need to use?
On result executed.
On result executed or on result executing or on result executing execution async. Which method I need to use? to write, I mean to store the complete response detail into logger file before sending to the client. So which method? So on result executing, no. Why? Because this is going to execute before action result execution. So this is going to handle both, right, in a synchronous manner. Start, then call the next middleware, then response. Then this is the method which is going to execute after the result execution. So this method we need to use here, right? So again, guys, remember, you should be very clear which method to use and when to use. So this on result executed. So first of all, I'm getting the HTTP context object. I'm getting the response object, right? Directly, you can also write context dot HTTP context dot response. For example, if you want, right, this is what you can write. Even, right, if you want to, right, get the user directly, then also, right, what I can say, you can also write this statement also, right? So you can also, right, comment this one, that is also fine. So now, okay, so here I'm storing this request path, so I'm creating this variable. And as I have created this variable, then I can use that variable. Okay. See, so this is my context object, this is my response object, this is my user object. User means the claims principal. So all the principal information going to be stored here. The response means that complete response. So this is my context object, right? From this context object, I can access everything. I can access the response user, right? Everything. Now what I'm doing here, right? I'm checking whether the user having any name identifier or not. For example, currently you can see, currently am I using any kind of authentication and authorization mechanism? In this example, did I implement any authentication and authorization example like token-based authentication? No. So if I'm not using any token-based authentication, definitely this user ID is going to be null or right, or you can store anonymous. If you are implementing, then that value will be stored here. Now, so in the response to the content length, so what is the content length that what I can access here, payload side. So this is my complete audit log. So whatever the response you set, that what I'm going to log. So what is the status code? Whichever the user ID, what is the payload size in wide, what is the request path and when, right? So everything I'm logging here, right? So that is what we need to log. So this is just for the logging purpose. So whatever the response you are returning, if you want to log this completely response object, then also you can write that one. So that is not required, but if you want, you can also log that one. So this is our all our logger classes. Next, what we need to do, we need to modify the program class. So basically, whatever the right one changes I'm doing here, that I'm disabling the camel case naming right convention. So that is what we need to do. Next, what I need to do, I need to create a controller to test these functionalities. So let me go ahead and create a demo controller. So create a controller API empty controller. And this controller, whatever I'm going to create, it will right, show you the use of all the result filter what we have created so far. So let us proceed and see. See, this is my method. So as this is a filter, so directly I cannot decorate like an attribute. So to make this as an attribute, we are using type filter. So what is type filter? Service filter we are going to discuss today. So get wrapped response. So this data I'm returning from my action method, but that data will be converted into a specific format by this API response wrapper filter, right? Get with the custom header. So here you can see I'm adding this add custom result header filter. So basically this is going to add these two custom header, right? So these are the two custom header that what you will see after the result execution. And this method, right, is going to return the data in this format. So this is status message, and whatever the data we return, that the data we need to return right as part of this JSON object, right? So next one is a large response. So basically, here what I'm doing, I'm creating a very large response. So this string A, so 150 into 124. So basically, I'm creating a string data of size 150 MB. So basically, for each character, it will take 1 byte. So what I'm telling here, 150 into 1024. So this number of times, right, whatever the multiplication result, that number of times that A will be created. That means that data size is going to be 150 MB. Why I'm creating 150 MB? Because I want to show you the compression mechanism, right? So that the data is going to be compressed. So audit logging means what you can say. So whatever the information we are returning, so that information we want to log into the right logger file. So currently by default it is going to make use of a console and a debug logger. So in the console window I will show you what information it is logging. And this is the filter which is going to be the combination of a multiple. So API response filter, add custom header response filter, and audit logging filter. See, in this case, the way we have added this filter, in that way only these filters are going to be executed, right? So in this case, multiple filters we are applying, right? So now let me run the application and show you whether we are getting the data or whether we are getting the response as expected or not. Okay. See, so it should return the data in a proper format. Status message. See, this JSON object we are returning from the client. I mean from the action method. But when the client receives the response, it is receiving in a proper format. So this is possible because of this API response result filter. So if someone asks you one of the example, so if you want to return the response or you can, if you want to format the response to a specific type or specific format, then for that purpose we can make use of a result filter. Clear? Yes or no? Okay. Next, custom header. Now, if you execute, so this is the response what I'm getting, that's fine. And here I'm not getting the response in that particular format. Why? Because we have not applied that API response wrapper result filter here. But here what is important? Important is you can see this X API version, what type of a version this API is using 1.0 and this cache control. So these two headers are going to be sent by the result below. So sometimes what happens before returning the response to the client, if you want to set some custom header conditionally, or for example, if you want to set some custom header with condition or without condition, right? Then in that case, we can also make use of a result filter for adding the custom response headers. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is large response. So here you can see I'm going to get, see the client will get the actual response data. So this is my actual response. The client will receive this one. But over the internet, right, the data is going to be transmitted using the GZIP encoding, right? So, and that's what you can ensure here. So if you are getting this content encoding GZIP means the data is right, transferred using some kind of a compression mechanism, right? For example, if I reduce the size, right, instead of 150, I reduce to 50. 50 means this time it should not use any compression mechanism. See? Does it use any compression mechanism? No. So that's what you need to know. Audit logging. So currently you can see there is no logging statement. Now I want to see what information we return to the client. So now you can see this is my log, audit log, responses, status, user ID anonymous, payload size in byte, it is not showing anything. And this is my response date and the time. So this that is what why it is not showing the payload size byte. So you just go ahead and check, right? That is a task for you, right? I know what is the reason, but you have to figure out why it is not, right? What I can say, storing the payload size, right? The next one is right. The last one is also there. Uh, the combine. So combine means multiple result filter I have applied. Here you can see I'm getting the response in a proper format. Right. You can see that X API version filter cache control. Right. API version filter is executed. But right, you can see that caching is not working. Why the caching is not working? Let us try to understand. So in this case, so what method, what data it is returning? I action result, right? And in the case of a caching, so this custom header, right? API version, And here, this method, right, this cache control is not working. Why? Let us try to observe. So in this case, why the cache control is not working? Can anybody tell me? Why the cache control is not working? Okay. So let put a debugger pointer here. So this is set. So what is the request method? Get. What is the object result? So content result is object result. So here it is not. So as it is not, so it is not returning the or it is not going inside this one. So now, wait, what I need to do? Okay. So, but I think there is a, but this is the data what I'm returning. Everything is fine. What is the issue, guys? The same thing I'm doing here. It is working with the custom header, but here it is not working. Why? Let me put this thing and see. Anything wrong? Multiple headers applied. So everything is same. Right? So we are returning the there's an object, right? Then why it is not working? So header. So in this case, it is working. Cache control, public maximum age. And then combined case, and I don't know why it is not working. Not executing. Okay, I will check. I will check this why it is not working. But ideally, it should work, right? It might be some right configuration is there. But I will check this one, right? So this is how you can write create a result filter in your application. Clear?
Yes. Yes.
Now, okay. So let me, or it might be possible because of a multiple filter. Okay, let me remove other filter. Let me put this I action results API response filter. So yeah, now it is working. Right? So see, it is possible because of a multiple filter, I hope. Right. So next, what we are going to learn, we are going to learn exception filter. Is that clear? What is the use of a result filter?
Yes, sir. Clear.
So next, what we are going to learn exception filter. See, guys, remember these exception filter are very very important, right? Important, and basically whenever you are executing your application code, If any unhandled exception occurred, then that exception filter is going to handle that exception. Guys, remember there are two things. One is middleware, another one is MVC pipeline, and another one is request processing pipeline. So if you look at the program class, so in this case, so this is nothing but your completely request processing pipeline. So request processing pipeline, use redirection, use authorization, map controller, right? Everything it means these are nothing but your complete request processing pipeline. And particularly this MVC controller, this is part of your MVC pipeline. So completely your ASP.NET Core request processing pipeline, which is going to include middleware plus your MVC. And this for a map controller means it is particularly related to your MVC controller pipeline. MVC controller pipeline means what it involves, right? What it include? It include, right? It include your what I can say authorization filter. It include your resource filter. It include your action filter. It include your action method. It include your result filter. So these things are combined together. It's nothing but your MVC pipeline. Then what is request processing pipeline? Request processing pipeline means when the request received till the the response returned to the client, which include any middleware component, routing, right? Everything starting from routing, executing any middleware component, executing the static files middleware component, everything is part of the request processing pipeline. Only those are related to your action method execution, that is your MVC pipeline. So whenever we are creating the exception filter, that exception filter is related to your MVC pipeline, not related to your request processing pipeline of a ASP.NET Core application. It is related to your MVC pipeline. What it means? It means it can handle the exception which are occurred starting from authentication filter to the result filter. Outside of this bound, right? For example, in the case of a routing, in the case of a static files middleware component, if you are creating any other custom middleware component, if some exception occur there, then this custom exception filter will not handle those. Clear? So first of all, you need to understand what is ASP.NET Core request processing pipeline and what is MVC pipeline. So MVC pipeline means starting from authorization filter till the result filter, whatever steps are executed. And for better understanding, right, what I can show you, right? So see client request middleware routing engine. See this middleware routing engine. So this is not part of your MVC pipeline. MVC pipeline will start from your authorization filter, resource filter, action filter, controller action, action filter, execution, result filter, resource filter, execution, right? So from this to this, from this authorization filter to this resource filter, this is part of your MVC pipeline. You know what is ASP.NET Core request processing pipeline? Starting from client request to client response, including the middleware routing engine. So if you are using exception filter, so this exception filter, if you are using, then it can handle the exceptions, right, which occurred from this to this. If there is some exception in the middleware, right? For example, whatever middleware component, custom middleware component you created, if there is some exception, then this exception filter will not handle that. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So first of all, we will discuss what is exception filter, and then we will see what is the best way to create a exception filter. Should I go with exception filter or should I go with a middleware component? So that is what we need to remember, right? So, what is an exception filter? Exception filter, you can see it is the fire alarm system in a building. So if there is something unhandled thing happening in the buildings, right, then that fire alarm is going to be right. So that is nothing but you can say the fire alarm system, the emergency response team. For example, there is an emergency team, right? If something wrong happened, if something right or unhandled situations occur in the organization, then that the emergency team will come into the picture to make things settle, right? So now right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how that custom exception filter is going to be created and how it can handle the different kind of scenario. But again, guys, remember, this exception filter will come into the picture only when there is an unhandled exception. That unhandled exception occurred during the MVC request processing pipeline, not to completely ASP.NET Core request processing pipeline, only MVC request processing pipeline. So let us try to understand this thing with one example. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new project. Again, I'm going to create one new project here. And to this project, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a few packages, right? So these packages, I'm not going to use, but I'm going to show how, right, to handle different kind of exception related to ADO.NET, exception related to entity framework code, exception related to other part, right? How we can handle. So for that purpose, I'm installing these two packages. So one package is for ADO.NET Core, SQL related error message. Another one is for what I can say, entity framework code related error message. So now what I'm going to do, this is my exception filter. Let me set this as a startup project. And to this project, let me add a folder called filter. So within this folder, let me create a class file called custom exception filter. Guys, those who have attended today's session, right? Please put your, right, what I can say, email ID in the chat window. I will share the documents to only those members today. Okay. So where I have installed that packages, I think I have installed in a wrong project. Okay, fine. So let me install the packages to this project also. Action filter demo. So it should be related to your exception filters demo. Okay. So this is my exception filter, custom exception filter, you can see, right? So what I'm going to do, minute. Okay. I did not. Okay. So here you can see, I'm creating the custom exception filter inheriting from the I exception filter, which is having one method called on exception, right? So that is fine. So that on exception method, within that on exception method, we need to write the logic. So here you can see, I have taken two parameter. One is the logger, where I need to log the exception details, and one is the iHost environment. Right? Basically, I'm going to check what is the environment. If the environment is development, I can return the detailed error message. If it is production, then I should not return the detailed error message, right? So that is what I'm going to do. So these two variable I have initialized through the constructor. On exception, see basically I have written this log statement. So the complete stack trace of the exception I am logging here. And this is unhandled exception, logging the error information, right? So status code definitely by default what I'm doing here. By default, it is going to be internal server error status code. Message is going to be internal server error. And I mean the error information is going to be internal server. Message is going to be an unhandled error occur. So this is nothing but your default error information, right? So default error means common information that what we need to return. And here what I'm doing here, I'm checking if the environment is development, then that context is not exception that message. The actual error message I'm replacing with this error message. If the environment is development. Clear? Till now clear?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
Now what I'm doing here, I'm writing some switch case statement, and this exception is going to hold the current exception type object. And then I'm going to check whether this exception object related to argument exception. If it is an argument exception, I need to return 400 bad requests. That means some of the data is not passed or some of the invalid information is provided by the client. And the message, right, you can write to pass this message, right, argument exception that message. Key not found exception, for example, right, key not found means if your application throwing some key not found exception, that is the ID, whatever the client is provided for that ID, there is no data available in the database. So in that case, this key not found exception, your application might be throwing. Authentication exception, authorization exception, right, that the user is not authorized, user is not authenticated. Yes, so both are going to do the same thing, authenticate. So it should be authorized, forbidden. So it should be forbidden, right? So that is going to be forbidden. Error forbidden, right? Clear? So in this case, it is unauthorized 401. So this is going to be 403 forbidden. I mean, you do not have permission to access the point. And here, I'm throwing that authentication is failed, right? If it is invalid operation, right? I mean, conflict. Conflict means some issue is there related to conflict. Then that 403, 409 conflict, you can return. If the exception related to SQL Server, then if it is throwing SQL exception or DB update exception, you can return SQL, right? You can return that is a database error. So if it is not implemented exception, right, then you can return this error message. If it is a timeout related, you can also return. So it's basically whatever the different types of exceptions you can handle in your application, right? So those exception information you can set here, right? And this is optional. If you don't want this one, then by default this information will return to the client. And then what I'm doing here, I'm creating my error response object with the status code. So this default status code will come into the picture, or the status code what you set within the switch case statement that will come into the picture, right? Wherever it is coming, that is fine. So we are setting the status error and message, and this error response I'm setting as the result property of my context object. And finally, I'm setting this exception handle true. So once this exception handle true is executed, it will not propagate that exception to the other layer, right? That means here we are explicitly marking that the exception is handled. So once the exception is handled, so this exception filter where we need to register. So it should be on controller, it should be on action level, or it should be global. Where we need to register this custom filter? Guys, tell me what is the best place to register this custom exception filter?
Global level.
Control.
Globally, right? So
Global.
global, right? So that is what we need to. So for registering this exception filter globally, so globally means where? Now where we register our controller services. So basically this is my controller services, and to these services I'm registering this filter options dot filter, and this is my custom filter. So similarly, if you are having multiple filters to be registered, you can write multiple statement here. So this is nothing but your right, registering the filter globally, right? So that is fine. So once this is done, it can handle all the exception. And here important thing, so this filter is registered globally within the add controller. Controller means MVC services. MVC services means it can handle exceptions related to MVC request processing pipeline, starting from the authorization till the result filter, right? But not the middleware, right? It cannot handle the exception related to middleware. So next what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the demo controller to show the use of this exception filter. So let me go ahead. Right. Say three argument exception, I'm throwing argument exception, I'm throwing key not found exception, I'm throwing some general exception, and this method is not having any exception. So basically, I'm illustrating, right? See, in this case, I'm throwing the exception manually. But in your application, you are not going to write this kind of statement. So whatever the statement you have written, that statement is going to throw the exception, right? So that's what I'm simulating here. So with these changes now, run the application and see whether the exception is being thrown and that is going to be handled by the custom exception filter or not. So argument exception. So definitely you will get an exception, and once you continue, then you will see that response message. Similarly, not found, you will see it is going to throw the exception, that is fine, and you will see not found exception details. Similarly, if I call this method, then it should return me the data as expected, and this is some unexpected, right? Some unhandled exception. So again, this is also going to be written by the generic message. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So that is fine. So that is fine. But the thing is that, as I have already told you from the right beginning, if you want something to be applicable for all other, for every controller, for every right action method, and apart from this, if it is related to other things like in this case, particularly in this case, if you want to handle the exception, then why not you handle the exception which is going to be occurred in the middleware component? Suppose you are creating some custom middleware component, and those custom middleware component, as you are writing some C sharp statement, and it might be possible that those middleware component are also going to throw some exception, some error, right? Then what is the best approach? So best approach is to use custom exception middleware component. It is not recommended to use custom exception filter, right? For right custom exception filter to handle the unhandled exception. It is recommended to use a custom exception middleware component. So filter are specifically designed for MVC request processing pipeline. Apart from MVC processing pipeline, if anything else is there, for example, you are not using controller based approach, you are using minimal API. If you are using, right, what I can say, right, yeah, uh, other approach to develop the application, you are returning some static files, middleware static files from your application, then those things are not going to be handled by the custom exception filter. Yes, if you do not have any custom middleware components, if you are not using minimal API, if you are not returning the static files from your application, if your application is completely focused on MVC pattern, I mean, if whether right, I mean completely there is no custom middleware component, nothing else, only MVC action method, or you can say controller action method, you can go with the custom exception filter. But it is recommended create a custom exception middleware component. So middleware component are meant for handling the completely request processing cycle. So what we need to do, we'll create a custom exception middleware component, and we will register that middleware component into the request processing pipeline. Now in the interview, you might get the question. So the interviewer might be ask you, can you please elaborate what is the difference between custom exception filter and custom exception middleware? You have to tell, yes, custom exception filter is specifically designed for MVC process request processing pipeline, means anything related to MVC action method, right? That exception is going to be handled. For example, authentication filter or authorization filter, result filter, action filter, resource filter, action method execution. So anything related to this, that exception is going to be handled by the exception filter. But if we are using minimal API, if we are using some custom middleware component, if we are returning some static file, which is not part of the MVC request processing pipeline, then though if there is some exception on those places, then right, these things are not going to be handled by the custom middleware component. But if we are creating a custom, sorry, those are not going to be handled by the custom exception filter. But on the other hand, if we are creating a custom middleware component, it will handle the complete ASP.NET Core request processing pipeline, including the MVC middleware. So whatever right process request processing pipeline we have created for the MVC, plus other things, everything is going to be handled by the MVC right. Everything is going to be handled by the custom exception middleware component. So the fundamental thing, if we are developing the application only focusing on controller action method, no custom middleware component, no minimal API, nothing else, then we can go with the custom exception filter, even right. But if we are having minimal API, if we are creating some custom middleware component along with the controller action method, and if you want to handle the exception globally, then it is better to use custom exception middleware component. And as per the recommendation by Microsoft, please go with the customer middleware, right, customer exception middleware component. If you are creating something which is going to apply globally to all the components, whatever you created in your project. Clear?
Yes.
Yes,
Clear
sir.
or not? Right? So this is one of the important concept that what you need to know. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a custom middleware component. So let me show you how you can do this thing. So the implementation wise, it is going to be same, right? But the purpose is going to be different. So let me go ahead. First, create a folder. Inside that folder, create a custom middleware folder. So this is custom handling middleware, exception handling middleware. So this exception handling middleware going to handle the exception globally. So let me go ahead. So you know how to create a middleware component. So I'm not going to keep focus more on this because we have created many things. So you can see this is my middleware component. So this is my controller. This controller taking some parameter request delegate. So what is the use of a delegate? Now it will invoke the next middleware component. This logger and environment that is same as our custom exception filter. Why? We need to log the exception details based on the environment. So these two things plus this requested delegate that what we have to include. And this exception middleware component we need to register, and that component will invoke the right, and this invoke async method whatever we define that is going to be invoked automatically by the framework. So in the invoke async method we have written the try catch block, the common right, and the popular try catch block we have written, and within the try block we just call the next middleware component. So now anything you execute, everything will come as part of this try block. And anywhere, if you got some unhandled exception, definitely this generic catch block is going to handle that exception. And this catch block, once it handles the exception, it is calling this exception async method. So here it is taking the context object, the exception details, and this logic we have already know, right? So we have already discussed. So log the exception details, set the default error message, set the message details if it is other than right, if it is a development environment, right? Handle the specific exception type, right? Prepare the error response, right? Is serialize that error response, and then set that error response to the context dot response dot write string, right? So that is what we have already discussed. So this is nothing but right now as part of this try catch block, every other things means other middleware components, other MVC request processing pipeline, static files middleware, right? Whatever you are having, they are going to be executed now. So once you create this middleware component, now the question is where we need to register this one, where we need to register this middleware component. So you have to register this middleware component as early as possible. So before executing any other middleware component, you have to register. So it should be the first middleware component in your request processing pipeline. So basically, after this huge HTTPS redirection, you have to register this middleware component. So how to register this middleware component? Can anybody tell me? So you have to use this logic. So after using middleware. So it should come before any other middleware component. So mostly after this HTTPS redirection, you have to register this. So once you register this one, then you can remove this one. Clear?
Yes.
Clear or not? Okay. So once you registered, now run the application and see whether that exception is being handled or not. So now any exception, right, that is going to be handled by this custom exception middleware. Clear? So it is always recommended to use a custom middleware component for exception handling. For global exception handling, you should prefer middleware component over custom exception filter. Clear?
Yes.
Clear or not?
Yes, clear.
Okay. Next, what I'm going to discuss? I'm going to discuss the last piece of information you can consider. That is the service filter versus type filter. Now, if you look at the example, multiple example we have created, right? Not this exception filter, right? This result filter you take into consideration. So we are using this type filter to register the custom filter. Now, now we need to understand what is this type filter, what is the service filter, what is the difference between them. Right? See, basically, this is type filter and service filter are two approaches to register a custom filter. These are the two approaches to register a custom filter on the controller level as well as on the action method level. So in the controller level, if you want to register a custom filter, or in the action method level, if you want to register a custom filter, then you have to use service filter or type filter. So what is the difference? Let us type out. So the difference is, right, service filter is basically used when, like if you are, right, for example, right, service filter. Service filter means you have to register that service filter first. Register the custom filter. First of all, you need to register the custom filter into dependency injection. Right? Whatever your dependency injection, you have to register that service filter. Clear? So register that means what? Means wherever in your program.cs class file, you have to register that service filter. And while you are registering the service filter, you can decide the scope of the object. Scope means it can be that filter object that can be singleton, that can be scoped, that can be transient. Clear?
Yes.
Right? So without this, it will not work, right? This is mandatory. Then second thing is that now when to use service register filter means when the filter have some dependency. When the filter has a dependency. For example, you create a custom filter, and that custom filter depends on something, some other services. Like they might be required the DB context instance. They might be required that iLogger instance, right? That means what? Whatever the filter we are creating, if they need some other resources in order to process the request, right? That means when the custom filter has some dependency, so when the custom filter has some dependency, then in that case, we need to use this service filter. So basically, if the filter has some dependency, if the custom filter has some dependency, then we need to use service filter. And in the case of a service filter, we need to register that custom filter into the dependency injection container. And while registering, we need to decide what type of a filter should this. So should it be a singleton? Should it be a scoped? Should it be a transient? Right? And then what is the use of a type filter? The type filter means no registration. No registration required into no registration required into dependency injection. No registration required into dependency injection. Here, you have to register your custom filter into dependency, but here you do not need to register that into the, right, what I can say, into the dependency injection container. Then when we need to use this one? Now when the constructor require dynamic parameter. When the constructor requires some dynamic parameter, for example, right, what is the department ID? Right? For example, you are creating a filter which will take the dynamic department parameter, and based on the dynamic department parameter, right, you need to decide right, whether to process the request or not. And this dynamic parameter is not global. It should be provided at the time of its use. For example, wherever, right, for example, in action method 1, I want to apply this parameter, I want to apply this custom filter by passing the department value as IT. In the action method 2, I want to pass the department value as some HR. In another place, I want to pass multiple parameters. That means the parameter of the custom filter, if it is going to vary from action method to action method, from controller to controller, then that is not possible with this registration approach. Yeah, why? Because here you need to register this filter independently. But if the filter constructor itself requires some additional information, then that is not possible with the service filter. So basically, whenever the custom filter requires some dynamic parameter, then in that case, we need to go with the type filter. In case of a type filter, registration is not required into the dependency injection container. I mean, no registration in program.cs class file. When the filter doesn't have any dynamic parameter, then in that case, we can go with either type filter or service filter. And in that case, if you are going with the service filter, then you have to register that filter into the program class. Otherwise, it will not work. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let us understand this practically. Right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a project, filters demo. Let me go ahead. New project, filters demo. Let me set this filters demo as the startup project. And then create a folder called filters. So within this filters folder, we are going to create two filters, custom filter, custom action filter. One to show the use of a service filter, another one to use the show the use of a type filter. So execution time logging filter, execution time logging filter. So in this case, right, if you look at the filter, see, if you look at the filter, it is taking only this I execution I logger filter, the right parameter. That means this execution time logging filter have only dependency on this logger. And this logger instance itself, that logger instance, that I logger is already registered into the dependency injection container. So this logger instance, I do not need to pass right from action method to action method. This is not dynamic. This is a static, and the framework already know how to manage this instance. So this is the right candidate for which type of a filter, guys? This is the right candidate for type filter or service filter. Does the constructor accept any? Does the constructor accept any dynamic parameter?
No.
Yes or no?
No. No.
If the constructor doesn't accept any dynamic parameter, then which one is the right candidate for this type of filter? Service filter or type filter?
Service filter.
Service.
Right, so service filter. And this method is already, you know, what is on action executing and on action executed. So what I'm doing here, now when the execution start and when the execution end of the action method, right, that time I'm logging here, right? That is the action execution time. Next, what I need to do, as this is a right candidate for service filter, then do I need a registration for this into the dependency injection container? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So for that purpose, what I need to do, I need to register this. So let me first go ahead and modify the program class. So this is not the registration. Now I will do the registration. So registration means what type of registration you need. So this should be a static one. It should be, I mean, this should be scoped or transient or what I can say. Okay, so which program class is this? Filters demo. So where we created this class, this is also filters demo. So I'm getting confused. Okay, let me close all the document. So this is my filters demo. This is my program class. So inside this program class, I need to register, right? So you can decide what type of a filter is this, right? So whether you need to right? So whether it should be a scoped one or transient one or singleton one, that is your responsibility. You can take the decision what type of registration you need, right? I'm not going to discuss that concept here. Should I use, right, what I can say, singleton, scoped or a transient, right? So next one is, I'm going to create another filter, custom validation filter. So let me go ahead and create a input, create a class file within the filters folder. So inside this filter, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it. See, basically, what is my requirement? My requirement is dynamically I will take the header information and I want to check whether that header is available in the request or not. For example, in action method one, I need to check whether the authorization header is missing or not present. In action method two, I need to check whether X API version header is there or not. In action method three, I need to check some X API key header is there or not. That means from action method to method, I need to check whether a particular header is available or missing. That means in this case, this required header value, right? This required header value is going to vary or it is going to be fixed one.
Very.
Vary. So if it is going to vary from right place to place, then in that case, is this is a good candidate for service filter or type filter?
Type filter.
Right? So type filter. So in this case, what I'm doing, so whatever the required header, that's what I will check. And if that header is present, that is fine. If not present, I will return the error by specifying that this message is missing. So basically, this will be the right candidate for type filter, and this will be the right candidate for your service filter. And for service filter, it is mandatory to register that filter into the dependency injection container. For type filter, do I need to register this filter into the program class?
No.
No. So directly we can apply. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a controller and showing how to use both of these. So this is going to be my controller class. See, so in this case, this is service filter and this is my type filter. Now, so in this case, using this type filter, I registered my custom validator filter. So this validator filter and this type filter provide the options to pass the argument. So currently you can see there is a required header and for that purpose, I'm passing this argument X API key. So it will check whether this X API key is available or not. So that is what I'm passing. Now for the service filter, there is no dependency, right? So you can see only this one, and this will be provided by the framework now. So can I use this one, right? Can I use this one with type filter? And can I use this one? Sorry. So can I use this type filter with service filter, or this one is type filter? See, in this case, right? If I am applying this one, so both are going to be what? So I can apply the custom validator with service filter with the type filter, that is fine. Sorry. So not this one. Let me go ahead and do this. See, both of this filter, custom validator filter, execution time logger filter, both are applicable with type filter. Type filter, here I apply the custom validation, additional argument is there which I need to provide. And this one, type filter, again that custom time logger. So here I can also apply. So both are applicable here. Now, so this service filter is fine. But can I use this service filter here? No. The service filter doesn't have the capacity to provide dynamic arguments. Clear? The service filter doesn't have the capability to provide a dynamic constructor parameter. So that is the reason why when your filter requires some dynamic parameter, dynamic arguments, right? Then it is mandatory to use the type filter. If it is not taking any parameter, you can use service filter or you can use type filter. It is up to you. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So if your custom filter requires some dynamic parameter, you have only one option, that is type filter. If the custom filter doesn't take any dynamic parameter, you have two options. One is type filter, one is service filter. Type filter means at runtime, That dependency, this type filter will take the responsibility to create the instance and use. And the service filter will take use of the dependency injection. So how you are mentioning, for example, you want to create a singleton, and if it is not taking any dynamic parameter, then you can mark here singleton, and then you can use that instance here, and that singleton instance is going to be used by the service filter. Service filter will take the instance from the dependency injection container, and the type filter will take the responsibility to create the instance. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is the difference between service filter and a type filter in your application. Okay. So the last thing what we are going to discuss is this diagram. So already we have discussed the request processing application. So when the client, so initially the client will send the request. Once the request received, it is the middleware component which is registered in the application processing pipeline. That middleware component is going to execute like routing, course, authentication, static files, exception handling, anything, right? Whatever middleware component you registered, whatever the sequence of registration, accordingly this middleware components are going to be executed. After the middleware component execution is completed, then routing engine will come into the picture. So routing engine means this map controller. So this will come into the picture. So this routing engine will decide which controller and which action method to execute. Right? So the routing engine will decide which controller and which action method to execute. Once it decide the controller action method, then the authorization filter will come into the picture. So why authorization filter will come into the picture? Because it is the first filter that is going to be checked whether the user has permission to access the resource or not. Once the authorization is done, that means user is valid and the user has a proper permission to access the action method. Then that action filter will come into the picture. Right. So action filter, right? Not action filter. So I just go in the wrong direction. From here, that resource filter will come into the picture, right? So resource filter means it will come into as early as possible and go as late as possible, right? For example, if you this resource filter when it comes, right, it will decide whether to return the cache response to the client if the response is already available, or if something is went wrong, then I can also short circuit the response and I can return from here only, right? So once the research filter is done, then the action filter will come into the picture. So this action filter, has two options. One is a pre-action filter, another one is a post-action filter. So this is what I'm showing here. This is going to be your pre-action filter, right? So pre-action filter, input validation logging, right? Whatever you want to do, you can do. After this pre-action, then your actual action logic is going to execute. After the controller action method execute means what? It will deal with model, it will deal with services, it will deal with repositories, right? Whatever the logic you have written, everything is going to be executed. And once it is executed, then the post action filter is going to be executed if anything is there. After post action filter, then that the result filter will execute. Again, right, one thing is missing here. This result filter, what it is going to execute, there are two things, right? So there are two things means one is a pre-result, one is the result, right? One is pre-result. The second one is what? Second one is your action result execution. After action result, then that post result execution is going to happen. After post result execution, then again this resource filter will come into the picture, and then any exception occurred, that exception filter will come into the picture, and finally the client will get the response. So basically here two things are missing. What three things are actually two things are missing. What? Now this result filter, it will be considered as the pre-result. After pre-result, it will be the result execution by the framework. To result execution, again that post result will come into picture, and after post result, this resource filter will come into the picture. So basically, the things which is missing in this diagram, right? Uh, you can, right? So basically, these things I have missed here. So if you see this is, so here this pre-result, result, post-result. So these three things will be there instead of this result filter. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
right? So this is the completely, or you can say, overall flow of a ASP.NET Core request processing. Anyone having any question, they can ask. Guys, tomorrow no class. Tuesday we will discuss the repository pattern. What is repository? What is generic? What is non-generic? How you can mix generic with and non-generic? And finally, we'll conclude with the unit of work.
Okay.
Anyone having any question related to filter, they can ask. Guys, filter are very, very important, right? If you understand the filter concept, many things you can easily handle. Anyone having any question, guys?
No.
Clear. And guys, if anyone have not yet provided the email ID, please put, because I can see 29 members, but only 20 email IDs provided. Those who have not yet provided the email ID, please put your email ID in the chat window, because I'm going to share the document only to those members who have provided their email ID. If you attend, if you don't provide your email ID, you will not get the document.
Videos will be in the group, correct? Videos will be in the group.
Your voice is not audible to me.
Videos will be in the group, correct?
Sorry? Your voice
He's
is
asking
not.
about videos.
Videos will be in the group.
Yes. Videos will be available. Video will be provided to everyone. Document only. See, I'm spending the whole life for preparing this documentation. And if you guys are not attending the live session, means you are going to miss the document. Video I will provide it. So do you think that preparing this documentations, right, is very easy, right? Because right, I don't know, right, how many of you are aware about this concept or not, but right, so these things are happening behind the scene, and even people are having 10 year of experience, 15 year of experience, they have no idea, right, how the action method execution is happening, right, how the result is being prepared. So these things, right, right, preparing these documentations, right, uh, so that, right, preparing the documentation means preparing with the image so that you can easily understand. It's not that easy. It is taking too much time. And if you are not attending means you are not respecting me, my work. So I'm not going to share the document to those who are not respecting my work. If you are attending, you are respecting, you will get what you deserve. If you are not attending the live session, means you are not respecting my work, so you will not get the documentation. Only the videos are available. From the video, whatever way you want to prepare the document by yourself, how you are going to prepare the example by yourself, it is your responsibility, not mine. Okay, so 29 messages I have got. Okay, let me copy this all the email IDs.
So Tuesday also the classes will be in the morning.
Sorry?
Tuesday also the classes will be in the morning, not in the evening.
This morning. So currently I'm in my native place, right? So I'm taking the session in the morning because in the night, right, I'm having some power issue. So in the village, I belong to proper village. In village, there is some internet issue, light issue in the night time, right? So that's the reason why I'm taking the session in the morning.
So can we shift the class by half an hour around 7? Can we start?
We have enrolled
Second,
for the Azure classes also, so we'll have a
sorry.
conflict. I had enrolled for the Azure classes also, so it is getting conflict for both. So
Okay. No, I can write what I can say. I can write start the session by 7. That is fine. And this is not going to be right. What I can say always right. For few days, I'm going to take in the morning.
Okay.
so in the Azure also we are getting some important classes out there, so it is getting conflict for me.
No, no. See, those who are having some issues, right? They can tell me, right? For example, I'm not saying here, I'm not going to share the document to everyone. Many people are there who have already informed me that they are cannot attend the live session. I will share the document with them. But those people are but those people number are very less. Only 10 to 15 guys are there. But 10 to 15 guys only attending 30, 45. So combining the two sessions, more than 200, more than 300 members are there. Where are others? Okay. So guys, please check if I missed anyone's email ID. So I will share the document to this email. Thank you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.